We're going to spend the rest of the presentation, or some of the rest of the presentation, talking more about current portfolio positioning and where do we see opportunities going forward, and kind of responding to our presentation title, looking for the technological inevitability in this very uncertain times. And I'm going to start, the three examples that we're going to go a bit deeper on, significant exposure for the portfolio, and place we've been adding capital, sometimes taking advantage of the recent weaknesses in the share prices. And this particular one is, you could call it a bit contrarian. The EVs as a thematic have been very popular in sort of 2020, 21, and really kind of lost favor with investors over the past year or so. And some of that is fundamental recognition that we've exhausted some of the early enthusiasm for early adopters of EVs. A lot of that was concerned that both the sort of subsidy incentive programs that stimulated some of the EV demand have been cancelled or scaled back, and also the macroeconomic environment is a bit more uncertain. And ultimately, buying EV is about buying a car, and that's a big consumer decision. That consumers tend to delay those in less certain environments. But we think electrification is technologically inevitable, and it continues, even if sometimes it continues by stealth. And if you look at the right side of this chart, some of this very small figure of an individual presenting in front of a very large screen is a great illustration of that. Electrification isn't just about pure battery EVs; it's about hybridization as well. So we're familiar with the plug-in hybrids. There's a new category which has been hugely successful in China and is coming to the Western markets, called extended range hybrids. And this is where you combine effectively a generator with the battery, and you achieve ranges like, for this Xpeng model, for example, 1.4 thousand kilometers. There are cars that do 2,000 kilometer ranges. So really much, there's no range anxiety here. There's much longer range than anything, a diesel car can do. The battery technology continues to progress. We've seen pretty spectacular performance numbers from some of the recent versions of batteries, and they're cheaper as well because they're using slightly different battery chemistry. And then you also have a new acronym for us to learn, XBW, which stands for X by wire. So the functions of steering, power steering, and braking, as well as the actual propulsion, as well as actual traction, are moving from hydraulics and mechanics to electrics. So you're, as you know, in some of the drive-by-wire cars, when you move the steering wheel, it actually doesn't have any physical connection to the actual wheels anymore. It's basically sending a signal, and the algorithm turns the wheels just the right way for the speed and conditions. And you have this pretty interesting consumer propositions where some of these new cars, and this is real, this is happening, can literally shuffle sideways into a parking spot, for example. So you don't have to parallel park anymore, or you can spin on a dime, so you don't need to do 3-point turns. So the consumer proposition of that is becoming really compelling. And so the supply chain of this electrification is a very complex space. We dug through it in a lot of detail. And we've arrived to 4 areas which actually are oligopolistic, disciplined industries with some really great companies, very profitable, very cash generative, top of their game with very strong market share positions. And some of them are pretty prosaic, like connectors, where we own American Amphenol, or passive electronic components, capacitors and resistors and things like that, where we own Taiwanese listed Yageo. But some of them are very high tech. For example, in power semiconductors, the smart devices that are managing the power on the car, Infineon continues to be the dominant leader and is gaining all that benefit of electrification by stealth or otherwise. And then all this electrical movements, rotations, actuations, etc., require sensors to measure speed, angle, and currents flowing through the circuitry. And Allegro, a US-listed mid-cap company, is a dominant leader in that sensor space. All of these companies are profitable, cash generative, and have very strong balance sheets.